So Holly, as we're moving towards the back half here of 2024 and moving into 2025, how are you thinking about the venture capital markets and the new technology markets, and always considering it from the lens of where should people be, what should people be thinking about when they're going to be betting their careers on a new opportunity, and how would that relate to the venture markets?
We're knee deep in this, right? We've been seeing the positive momentum. It was always a question around uncertainty of this year, of course, being a transitory year. Moving into next year, we've already seen positive momentum in terms of increase in investment, in terms of increase in activity. Deals are getting done, money is being spent at a healthier clip than we had seen over the first couple. As we go into 2025, we do expect that to continue. And then as we look at career and the implication there, I always think about it as the intersection of what the market cares about, what they're investing in. That's where you get that career build, that experience that is really directly related to your longer term marketability. So if you're in a market that is of high interest, for instance, electrophysiology right now, used to be grandpa's pacemaker, right? And now we're all talking about ablation, and we're talking about the future of arrhythmias. And now we have these incredible cardiac monitoring devices that are catching them sooner, able to diagnose and able to treat these patients that were historically so difficult. If you're thinking about opportunities in a space like that, where there has been a number of deals this year and a lot of investment continuing to go into that space, it's a great place to get robust experience that you can translate downstream.
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point. We kind of had the perfect storm over the last couple of years. We had increased interest rates. The public markets were not performing well, and basically were non-options for exits for early stage companies. But we are starting to see increased investment. I think through Q3 of 2024, we've exceeded the investment that was made in 2023. We've had 195 acquisitions, M&A acquisitions this year, all pointing. We've had starting to see some thawing in the public markets. Ceribell went public and has done very well. They're tracking to $1 billion valuation, which is a positive sign that I think everybody's keeping an eye on. So they're all positive signs. And to your point, I agree with you. You want to look where the money's being invested, but also where is there going to be a runway of new technology over a period of time. If you're not managing your career for the next 3 years, you're managing your career for the next possibly 5, 10, 15. And so is that money flowing into spaces like cardiac ablation, where we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg? There's still a lot of unmet need in that market, and will continue to be investment in that market for the foreseeable future. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and we really have seen such a nice harmonization, and I'll say even finally, between digital tools and invasive technologies. We're actually seeing them really work more closely together. And even outside of the invasive technologies, those that integrate into the workflow. It took a long time, decades, to figure some of this out.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing more companies do it successfully, companies that are servicing organizations to optimize clinical research, whether it's in EP or in any other area. Those technologies are now getting legs to them, and they're now proving out to be revenue opportunities, not only for hospitals and payers, but for in better outcomes for patients. So you get the triple gold there. And when you have those aha moments in the markets, which is what they've come back to after years of work, we know that trend is going to push forward for the next few years. So what does that mean to an individual who may be considering leaving orthopedics and going into cardiovascular with a crossover skill? They're now increasing their marketability bandwidth for not just today, but for 3, 5, 10 years down the road. We're not taking away their orthopedic prowess, we're adding to it in a different clinical area.
Yeah, and I think another component of that is as so many of these companies migrate from being just, I call them legacy analog medical device companies, and they become digitally oriented companies. I don't want to say they're digital companies, but they're digitally oriented companies. and they're really kind of redefining the value chain for the customer. And it's no longer, okay, we're going to sell this implant, we're going to support this procedure. It's how can we associate additional services to that? How can we provide data? How can we provide insight, which ideally will eventually generate additional revenue streams for these medical device companies. So the component to that where it gets tricky is reimbursement, right?
Sure, yeah.
Who is going to pay for this? Because as you know, in the venture community, if they can't figure out who they're going to pay for it, it's uninvestable.
Yeah.
And so that's where, the one thing that I think is something that the candidates or the individuals that are looking in the market need to keep in mind is yes, you want to be on that leading edge of technology, but you also have to make sure that it's affordable and adoptable and able to be utilized on an ongoing basis. And big component of that is reimbursement. So it'll be interesting to see how all that works out.
Oh, for sure. And especially when you're looking at technologies that reimbursement models include service so heavily. We're looking at a heavy influx of SaaS and software as a medical device as being revenue streams. So venture's just getting their head around that. What does that really mean? Or we're all getting our head around that. What does that really mean? So as we're figuring that out, the pioneers in that space will leave a nice tailwind for individuals coming into it, which is where we see some things going at the macro level. Like I really like, when you think about examples of this, I like companies that took cardiac rhythm monitoring management and created utility for it that really went into diagnostics and therapeutic opportunities, like Vital Connect. I mean, Vital Connect is incredibly profitable now and running with that model of, look, we're going to be a nice solution, but we do have an agnostic platform that has all these other opportunities. Heartbeam, so they have a really interesting 12-lead ECG with 3D vector capabilities, and if we can wrap that into models, maybe upstream with pharma trials in addition to other partnerships with other devices.
Clinical development, yeah.
My goodness, there's so much more opportunity here than ever. And when you come back to career, which is interesting, I'm hearing more of a call for created opportunities within these companies that focuses on business development and partnerships that are outside the traditional. Where can we leverage our technology in either trials or your technology? How can we bundle these together? Think Apple Watch, because we all do.
Right.
It's an easy reference point, but if we can really create smart and simple to use and a great user experience, whether it's clinician, patient-driven, or consumer-driven, dare I say, you do have options to bundle these things. And that business development opportunity, that person who can think creatively and test those relationships and the propensity for them, that can be a really great option for individuals.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Partnerships and business development type roles have never been more important than they are right now in Medtech. It used to be, have an idea for a technology, build that technology, get that product approved and take it and sell as much of it as you could in the market. And it's just not that type of a business anymore because there's so many different revenue streams. And I think that was a natural evolution that we saw occur in technology, in high tech and business development roles and partnerships and whatnot. So it's interesting to see that as technology is starting, to cannibalize medical devices, that we're starting to see those roles play not only a big part in individuals managing their careers, but also a big part in revenue generation for these companies and whatnot. So it's interesting to see the market redefine itself for sure.
Yeah, the market redefine itself, and also the persona who may fit a business development role, right? It's not the same person that it used to be. It used to be more of the classic sales professional, and now with the angles and the relationships being so different and diverse, that individual may come from more of a marketing orientation or
Right.
even more of a product orientation.
Yeah, well, the technical aspects.
Yeah, the technical aspects. However, they still have to be a visionary enough to see where the possibilities are. And sometimes technologists, we have a tendency to think about probabilities instead of possibilities. So we have to make sure that if you're going into those roles, that you're looking for the options to explore what could be with these platforms and what partnerships could be, because it's not going to be obvious. This is
Right.
not something has been done before.
Yeah, it's an evolution for sure.
It is.
So Holly, here at TMG, we talk a lot about lightning rod hires, right? I'd love for you to kind of share your perspective as you're building your client companies, these early stage Medtech and life sciences companies. What's the importance of making these lightning rod hires, especially early on in the organization? What's the value they bring, and how have you seen it impact your clients?
Yeah, with an emphasis on earlier stage organization, we have less hands on deck. So the individual who can come in and make a big impact, and I mean broader than perhaps one role, broader than one function, broader than one person in some circumstances, and have the ability to have that pull-in, that engagement to the marketplace for other hires and for other business deals downrange, that can be incredibly valuable. When we hire for young companies, it's never just a function. If we need just a function, we hire a consultant.
Right.
We need someone who comes in and helps the company build first by way of a certain function as part of that. So the lightning rod hire, the person who we've referred to as a force multiplier, is doing exactly that. They're coming in and they're covering broad responsibilities with a big eye on the ball in terms of where the company's going. And whether it's a software engineer or a COO, the vision and the road is the same. And how can we do this collectively together, especially if you're looking at an organization that's less than 40 and then much less than 20 or even 10. It goes up, it accelerates in terms of the criteria to make it valuable.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one thing that I've seen is not only, there's a couple different effects of hiring these types of individuals. Not only is it, okay, they're going to come in and they're just going to be able to do more with less. And they're going to be able to do the work of, what is the Price is Law, right? They're going to be a Price is Law.
80-20, yeah.
Right. They're going to be that individual that can do more with less, but they're also, people are going to join that organization because that person went over there.
That's right.
Or they're going to take notice of that organization and start following. What are they doing? They must be doing something really special if Holly went there or this individual went there.
That's right.
And then it's not only just the talent that it brings in, but it's the pace setting that occurs. Once you bring an individual into a team like that, and this kind of becomes the norm of production,
yes,
everybody just kind of levels up their game.
Yes.
And so you get that,
Yes.
That rising tide floats all boats type thing,
Yes.
Where others will strive to achieve that level of performance that individual is having. And so it will force the entire organization to level up.
Oh, yes. No, certainly. And with that, I want to support the first-time startup person for a minute, because so often we get the pushback on individuals who have not been in a startup environment and they're coming from a large strategic, and can they function? Can they do all of this? We've seen this happen often with great success for some of the reasons that you mentioned. If we can ensure that the person is ready to move fast and can deal with the chaos and the uncertainty and the pivoting and all that is involved, which you can assess pretty strongly with references and such. But what happens when that individual comes from a big strategic and they join this young company is they give immediate credibility to a young organization in the eyes of potential investors, potential partners, and potential additional hires.
Companies.
That's right, that's right. So we get that pushback quite frequently. Oh, they don't have startup experience, they'll never make it in a startup. It's like, they eventually can.
Yeah.
And the right person does so with great success. I had a placed a VP of clinical who's killing it came out of a big strategic and just nailing it with a young company, less than 15 people. So that transition can happen, and sometimes we have to explore the individual, because if you're looking for a force multiplier, it's not what's written on paper.
Right.
Goes back to the comment of, look, if it's just a function you need, hire a consultant. If you're really looking to build a company, you want more than that.
Is there anything, just to unpack that one level further, is there anything specifically that you think companies out there can be looking for when they're, if it's not somebody from a small company and somebody from a big company can work, but what's that one thing that you think is the biggest indicator of this person could carry a disproportionate amount of the water?
I think that's, look, there's general traits, right? The ability to be resilient, the ability to power through walls, the ability to make shit happen.
Yeah.
Those things are consistent, right? But then it gets down to functional. What exactly do we need them to do?
What's the problem that we're going to have to solve?
That's right. Have they been with a big strategic? And if it's a reg clin position, have they truly sat and fought for an underrepresented technology with the FDA or with DC lobbyists? I mean, where have they really put the work in? What have they done?
Where did they roll up their sleeves? What
That's
point in
right.
times at that strategic?
That's right. That's right. And I'll also look for examples outside of work. What have you done that has had you think on your own and drive something independently with limited information, where you felt like you were, in a vacuum or in a real tough spot? Because those life experiences, that's why we say, athletics and athletes and some of those traits seem to be consistent. Some of the people who have really made a difference in young companies have tended to be ones that have pushed through very, very difficult personal challenges.
Right. Yeah.
Very difficult personal challenges.
We're in Afghanistan with the military or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. Single mom who's raised 2 kids and, had a terrible upbringing. I mean, there's all kinds of stories that can make a person who they are and have that unicorn-esque DNA that organizations are fortunate to get. Then you got to figure out what they're going to focus on.
How you're going to deploy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes perfectly good sense. So Holly, you and I have both been doing this for a long time, and every candidate's risk tolerance is a little bit different. Every investor's risk tolerance is a little bit different. So as you've gone through the different stages of your career in talking to candidates, how have you noticed the risk profile or the risk stratification that a candidate must incur being at a startup versus being at a mid cap versus being at a large strategic? Everybody used to assign the label of being at a strategic very safe when I first started in this business 20 plus years ago. I don't know if that's the case now. I think, and in converse, startups used to be considered very risky. I would probably make the argument that the inverse could be true now, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we can bank on in terms of safety is our own career. That's why I'm so adamant about ensuring that you're staying close to where you're adding value and where the market's going. So as we've chatted about a bit, staying close to where investment's going, what the market cares about, growth markets, and staying in those worlds will help you stay close to what you know to be true about the future demand. Now, risk itself, though, there are plenty of big companies that have, as we've seen, the data's there. The layoffs have been unheard of in the last 2 years. It's been, and their M&A is picking up. They're not building in organically nearly as much as they used to. So when we think about the safety of a big company, I think that's non-existent. I'd also say with a young company, what is risk? Risk is the unknown, right? You know exactly how much money is in the bank in a startup. You know exactly where we're at clinically. And if you get poor results from your trial, or if you're not meeting a potential milestone, or FDA wants more information. So risk about the unknown is it's a completely different scenario. I would say you're more risky in a big company because things
Right.
happen outside of your purview in most instances. That doesn't change the individual decision,
Sure.
but I think it
Or
comes
what they value.
exactly what they value and what they want to gravitate towards. Because again, it goes back to where is your future marketability going to be banked? And going to a young company, and I tell individuals this all the time, I never say, look, this company is going to be successful. Just like I would never say that this big company is not going to make changes in direction in the next few years, because we don't know. The only thing we know is what's in front of us. If we're doing our diligence and we look at their market and we look at the growth size, growth in the sector going in, the investment going in, the leadership, you can get a general sense of a direction of an organization. And then the reality is, every 3 years in our industry, you can expect change.
Sure.
And that's either a change of companies or change of role or change of function. So what are you going to do in those 3 years on average that's going to increase your future value?
Yeah. It's interesting because the startup environment is really the one place where an individual can go and have a disproportionate impact.
Yes.
And so I always say, how willing are you to bet on yourself? Because if there's 10 people in an organization and you're one of them, you have a pretty an inordinate impact on the overall trajectory of that company, and thus having more control over your career, essentially. To your point, though, it doesn't change the fact that some people just enjoy working in a bigger company.
Sure.
They enjoy having that big brand behind them, and for those individuals, that there is definitely something to be said for that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do like the fact that there's been a destigmatization around the risk profile of startups these days. I think people are now seeing that this isn't super safe, and this isn't super risky. Everything's a little bit closer, in the middle, and then people can make decisions based on what am I going to enjoy doing, or where can I invest my time that's going to lead me to where I ultimately want to go in my career.